Singapore. So this is a unique destination because it is one of the world's only sovereign city-states. Yeah, it is known for its garden city due to its lush greenery integrated into a modern urban landscape. So its geography, situated at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula, gateway between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, one main diamond-shaped island and over 60 smaller islets. Topography, generally flat, low-lying. Climate, tropical rainforest. Climate, hot, humid, and rainy. So, um, its geography, something new about it. Since its independence in the 1960s, Singapore has increased its total land area by about 25% through extensive land reclamation projects. Culture diversity. So, a melting pot where different races and religions live harmoniously. We have the Chinese, Malay, Indian communities. Official languages, English, the language for of administration and education, Mandarin, Malay the national language, and the Tamil. So, and they also have their own English. Religious harmony. I think there's a street there where it features Buddhist temple, mosque, a Hindu temple, and church standing side by side. Heritage districts, Chinatown, known for its traditional tea houses, and the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple, the Little India with its spices and colorful textiles, and the Kampong Glam, the Malay Muslim Quarter, like a home to the Sultan Mosque. Practices and customs, uh, they are known for being disciplined, efficient, and deeply respectful of elders. So we have the hawker culture, eating at hawker centers. So you can see on the photo, they also have this etiquette, a local practice where people reserve seats at food centers using packets of tissues. Respecting elders, it is common to address older people as uncle or auntie as a sign of respect, even if they are strangers. Then cleanliness, of course. They have very strict laws regarding littering, chewing gum. It is also prohibited to sell one, and vandalism to maintain its clean and green reputation. Sustainability as a city in nature. Yeah, practices like harvesting rainwater and using the super trees at gardens at the bay by the bay to generate solar power are like their nation's identity. So this video, you can watch this on YouTube on Singapore, how the Singapore planned to be rich. Grandfather's story. It delves into the complexities of human relationships, particularly the dynamics between the grandmother and the grandfather. So it explores the family, the scars of the past. It balances the atrocities of the matriarch with a supernatural fable that attempts to explain a lifetime of bitterness. So, in the story, the family depicted that they have a lack of sense of togetherness and unity. Like the characters, especially the grandparents, exhibit deep-seated animosity toward each other. Their arranged marriage and the absence of any genuine connection highlight a lack of familial bond and harmony. And the narrative is told from the perspective of their grandchild, who reflects on the life and actions of their grandfather. Particularly, he is in contrast to the grandmother's harsh and authoritative nature. The grandmother's harsh personality. She was a formidable figure who brought many bondmates to work in her sewing business. So the narrator was in awe of her due to stories of mistreatment she had heard. The grandmother is depicted as powerful but cruel businesswoman. She is defined by her canny business sense and her lack of affection for children. And her success in the bridal and plantation industries stands in contrast to her failed interpersonal relationships. Like, there are rumors circulating that one of the bandmates died at a young age when the grandmother threw a durian at her. So the narrator, of course, imagined various terrible scenarios surrounding that incident. So it shows the grandmother's fearsome reputation. Although the narrator never personally witnessed the monstrous behavior, she did see her grandmother hit the bandmates in various ways. So from this, it shows power and authority. She is depicted as a dominant figure exerting control over her household and servants, while the grandfather remains distant and critical of her actions. Grandparents' contentious relationships. Ship rather. The narrator's grandparents seem to hate each other completely. Their, again, arranged marriage. The grandmother brought a large dowry with her. So after the narrator's parents died, so the grandmother left her husband, taking the three children, and started her own business. So she focused on becoming wealthy, while the grandfather lived with a mistress, grand aunt, whom he loved despite her inability to bear him sons. Now we can see grandfather reflective and somewhat passive figure who critiques his wife's cruelty but remains detached from direct confrontation. Grandmother's death and grand aunt's tragedy. So the grandmother died from cancer. She didn't want her husband at her funeral. He didn't attend. A year later, the grand aunt died when she slipped down the stairs. The grandfather was devastated and inconsolable for months, and his personality changed significantly. But one day, the grandfather surprised everyone by coming out on his room and sharing an ancient tale. So, to cope with his unhappy marriage and his wife's success, the grandfather tells a fable about a farmer, a nun, a gentle wife, and it serves an allegory like the nun represents the grandmother. The farmer is the grandfather. The gentle wife is his mistress. So the grandfather's story serves as a reflection on cruelty, betrayal, and consequences of greed. Literary approach, psychological criticism. We examine the underlying motivations, emotions, and subconscious influences that shape the characters and narratives. If we are going to analyze the grandfather, again, passive nature and reluctance to confront his wife suggests deep-seated emotional repression. His storytelling serve as coping mechanism, allowing him to express his thoughts indirectly. Grandmother, her cruelty toward the servants and her authoritative presence may stem from unresolved trauma or a need for control. So her behavior reflects dominance, again, possibly compensating for personal insecurities. Then the narrator, the grandchild, reflect on family history. It, it is an indication, it is like an attempt to understand the generational trauma. Their perspective highlights the psychological impact of witnessing power dynamics within the household. The Exile by Edwin Tambo. So the poem tells the unfortunate story of a radicalized Malayan Chinese in the 1950s. So the cost of political conviction and the tragedy of a man out of his depth. So the young man's idealism and political naivety lead to his downfall. He represents many individuals caught in the middle or the vortex of patriotic and pro communist sentiments during that time. So, historical criticism. The explanation of such situation roots after World War II. The Britain has to pay US, recover. So they found the British has this policy way back 1950s that they are going to send back the aliens who are the Chinese to China if they are suspected of supporting the Malayan Communist Party guerrilla war. We have the displacement. So the title itself suggests exile, emphasizing the feeling of being uprooted from one's homeland. The identity crisis, the protagonist grapples with questions of identity and belonging. The poem explores the internal struggle of someone caught between their roots and the realities of their current situation. Political idealism. So the consequences of blind political fervor. Imagery, symbolism, exile symbolizes both physical displacement and inner turmoil. Also, heartbroken, not brave to convey the emotional impact of exile. Again, its literary approach, historical criticism, set again in the 1950s, that uh, where there is it reflects the turbulent political climate of that era. So the radicalization mirrors real life struggles faced by many during that time. It is like this is like a cautionary tale about the dangers of blind allegiance and the human cost of political ideologies. Again, from the title itself suggests a sense of displacement and longing. The experiences of someone who feels disconnected from their homeland, community, identity. So, we have the migration and loss. The concept of exile implies leaving one's home and facing loss, whether it's physical, emotional, or cultural. Some flowers for a friend. This poem reflects on the impact of verbal abuse on a child and the resilience of human spirit. So it explores the resilience, hope, personal struggle. Sunflowers to symbolize strength, perseverance despite adversity. So the poem begins on addressing the hurtful words spoken by a parent to their child. The parent uses derogatory terms, which deeply wound the child. Despite enduring this verbal abuse, the child's innocence remains intact and they strive to escape judgment. So, the verbal abuse and its effects, parents' hurtful words are likened to venom from the human tongue. The child's heart shrinks, not only due to the harsh language, but also because the very essence of nature's communication may become incomprehensible because there is weight in some words. The child innocence is at odds with the abusive language directed at them. Seeking grace and understanding acknowledges that everyone transgresses in some way, violating societal norms or laws. But despite this, the speaker focuses on grace, a quality that seems random, but it's still hoped for. It suggests that our circumstances are beyond our control, yet we can strive for inner orientation toward the light. Sunflowers as symbols. Sunflowers are known for their resilience and ability to turn toward the sun. Like sunflowers growing from dirt, the child is encouraged to find strength even in difficult circumstances. It it represents the ability to turn to light despite being forced to live through the night. Again, despite the harsh upbringing, the poem ends on a note of grace and finding a silver lining. So again, the poem implies that inner orientation can help child overcome adversity. Literary approach, reader response, and psychological criticism. Um, the other interpretation of other scholars is that this poem has, again, resilience and growth. Again, sunflowers, individuals can endure hardships and still find light. Um, Someone may relate when it comes to struggles of identity, reflecting on personal challenges, emphasizing the difficulty of overcoming societal judgment, or maybe, despite hardships, the poem conveys optimism, encouraging the reader to seek positivity. Psychological criticism, healing, recovery. Personal healing takes time, just like what uh, in the analogy of the growth of flowers. And this aligns with some psychological concepts, theories on resilience and emotional recovery, self worth, and identity. So the speaker's reflection on the struggle indicates an internal conflict regarding self perception, like the sunflower, serve as an external representation of their journey toward acceptance. Then light versus darkness. The contrast mirrors the psychological battle between despair and hope. How external circumstances affect mental well being. But if we are trying to um, being shared by the speakers. From the perspective of the speaker, um, the speaker wanted to show that she had undergone introspection, showing signs of emotional struggle, but also desire for growth. Again, sunflower can act as a projection of hope, again reinforcing the idea that external symbols can provide comfort in difficult times. Or it subtly suggests that support from others plays an important role in overcoming personal hardships.